The Walking Dead Season 8, Episode 3, Monsters. Once again, we have another good episode. I would say this season has really kept things rolling. We've had some emotional stuff in this episode. We had some really good action moments. We had some interesting character moments, some of which emotional, some of which just kind of funny, which I'll talk about later. But all in all, definitely a good episode. We have, the continuing battle. We have Ezekiel doing his thing with Carol where they're taking the troops and it's, everything's great and fantastic. And for the most part, it was. I was honestly surprised. I was like, they went through the whole episode. And I knew, because, it got to the end. And I was like, okay, Carol, your counsel, your plan, you do what you decide. She's like, all right, I'm going to go check this out. I was like, something horrible is going to happen. I knew it. I was like, it can't be that they would kill Carol, because that would be insane to have that sort of, like the end of the episode is like the death of a main character. And so it was like, all right, something is about to happen here. It was too good. Like, things were too great. Like, even though not every story was good, because of course you have the Aaron and Eric stuff, I was like, this story itself is too good. Like, every story has to have something bad. So I was like, what is about to happen here? And of course, everything seems great, and Ezekiel was just like, this is freaking good. Like, he was freaked out. Like, he was almost about to cry when he's like, not one person died. And it was just like, the whole point was that he knew it's not like this is guaranteed, but he wants it to be that way. Of course, if they're on your side, you want them to live. And it kind of worked. It was like, holy crap, like, everyone's alive. Like, it's perfect. It's good. And then he looks up and he sees people in like the grates, and it was just a disaster. Like, and it was in like this, it was the end of the episode, and it was just like this insane, it was like almost a Gatling gun. And they just shot people up, and they're like, protect the king. And he yells no, because he doesn't want them sacrificing themselves for him. And like a bunch of people like dive on top of him, and a couple of them we see actually get shot. Like, blood flies in the air as they're trying to cover him. And I was like, wow, that's an intense way to end it, where it's just like, you have like this great storyline where it's like, this is the one where everything's going well. But of course, something's gotta fall. And it definitely did at the end of that episode. And people just got wiped out, and it will continue in the next episode, I'm sure. And then we see even in the promo, Carol is now dealing with a guy, so they're gonna have like a standoff throughout, points of the episode. But I love that. I was like, it was cool to watch them go through, and they're just taking people all left and right, and then it just comes crashing down at the end. It was like, this is great, and then they were literally in an open field, and it was just like, all right, the gun is now set up, left to right, and just spray them all down. And it's like, wow, that's a crappy way to have that situation turn. It wasn't like, oh, we lost one person. It was like, nope, battlefield. People are dropping like flies now. So excited to see how that's gonna continue on into the next episode. But a lot of other good stories. We have, of course, Rick and Daryl in this episode doing like their team up, trying to survive inside the building. Of course, Rick's still dealing with Morales. We don't get the full story, but of course his family died naturally. And, they go through, it's like, it's like, I know who you are and stuff like that, because, Rick goes through, the people that have died, and it's like, that person, like, I know who you are, basically, because it was kind of like a you're me situation, where we used to be these people, but those people are long gone. Those people died alongside their friends and family. Like, that's what happened, and that's kind of how Morales knows Rick. And it was just an interesting moment, and they're talking, and it's like, if you had the gun, I'd be brains on the floor, and it's like, I'd try to at least talk it out. And then Daryl comes along, and it was just like, boom, he's dead. And Rick was just like, oh man, it was like, do you know who that was? He's like, I know who it was, it doesn't matter. It's like, not one bit. Got my arrow back, let's go. So that was part one. That was the first moment where it happened, and this was like that weird character moment that made me laugh. And then it was towards the end of the episode, after everything's all said and done, and they have this guy like behind a tree, and Rick, he gives them the whole thing. You have my word. If you give us what we, the information we want, I'll give you the truck. You can live and just go on your way. So the guy comes out, gives them all the information. Like, yeah, we have the guns here. They're moved to Gavin's place, and so he's like, all right, so I can go. And then Daryl just boom blows his brains out. He's done. And Rick looks at him, and Daryl's just moving on. He's like, which team is at Gavin's? And Rick is kind of looking at him like, what have you done? And like that's the face I felt he was making in the beginning and at the end here. And I was just like, why is Rick looking like that? Like, has he not lived his own life? Like this whole this whole series with him going through just like losing his effing mind and shooting people in front of like crowds and stuff in Alexandria, all the craziness that he's gone through. And not just like actually killing bad guys, but sometimes going over the top, doing the things he did, like Alexandria, and I think it was when he first fought the husband that he ended up killing at the end. Anyway, when he like beat the crap out of that guy, and he was like all bloody, and it was like some crazy situation. I forgot exactly what it was, and everybody's looking at him, and he just got up and was just like, "What?" And like he's just covered in blood. It's like an insane situation. So it was just so funny in this episode where he's looking at Daryl like, how can you be doing this stuff? And it was just like, Rick, you look what you have done. Like, look where your life has led. This is your legacy. This is the legacy of Rick Grimes. And it was just so funny the way he was looking at him as if it was the craziest thing that he's ever seen or ever experienced when he's done stuff just like that. It's just funny. But I think they kind of built up a little bit that change over the last two episodes with Rick, where he's in this weird state, almost like in between where he used to be and, in a sense, actually being where Ezekiel fakes to be. Whereas, like, we've actually won. Like him, Rick giving that speech, like, we've already won and this is our land and stuff already. And it's like, it seems like they were kind of building that up, like him not shooting that guy when he was trying to protect Carl. It was like, I shot above his head. Like, we don't know this guy. I could have killed him because he could have been one of the saviors, but I don't know, which is why I shot above his head. And then, of course, in the last episode, him killing the guy and finding out it was like, this baby in a crib, and that really messed with his head too. So it was like these moments kind of coming together and building up, and him having the speech in the first episode. I think that's kind of the point of that weird look that he gave Daryl, where it's like he's looking at him as if that's just insane. Like, how could you just kill these people? Like, it doesn't make any difference. And it was just weird. It was like, man, Rick of all people kind of having these feelings is very odd. But they're in war, and Rick is Rick, so he's done all that stuff anyway. But it was just funny to me. I was like, wow, I cannot believe he's giving that look to anybody with some of the stuff that we've seen him do. But Daryl's just kind of keeping him on track. It's like, look, you're in charge. I need to just, like, I'm like your right hand man. It's my job to keep you going. So it's just like, let's move this crap along into war. We need to be just shooting and just keep on keeping on. So that's pretty much how that plays out. Ultimately, they have like their crazy little firefight in the hallway, which was actually a cool little sequence. And Rick ends up shooting the fire extinguisher, which I'm pretty sure should have exploded, because that's what I thought he was doing. I guess it depends, because I mean, it's like contents under pressure. Like if you shoot an aerosol can, like a spray paint can, it will explode. Like that's the whole point. Where it's said, that's why it says contents under pressure. If you put too much pressure on something that's already under pressure, it blows up. So I was like, He hit it and it was just like, and just sprayed out. I was like, I feel like that should have exploded. But I guess, it's not 100% guarantee. Admittedly, I am also kind of taking that fact, we'll say, from video games, where sometimes it does blow up, and even in some other games it doesn't. So it's like, I don't know. But a fire extinguisher, I would think, would explode because of the fact that its contents under pressure, or at least have a bigger kind of let off like that. Because it was legitimately like he just shot a hole in a pipe, and it was just like smoke coming out. I was like, that, even that, if it doesn't explode, seemed like just too smooth to me, where it's just like, psh, and it just came out. I was like, I feel like even if it did blow up, it would be a bit more, a little bit more chaotic than that. But I could be wrong. I've never shot at a fire extinguisher to see if it actually blows up in real life. But ultimately, they survive, and they wait till the rest of the team gets there. They take a couple of people out, and it's like, all right, we live. And then, they have their moment with the guy behind the tree. And so, with that moment, having like a weird character thing with Rick, it kind of leads me to the hilltop, where we have Gregory come back. And I love the scene where the gate's about to open and it stops. He's like, oh, is the gate broken? It's like, I told him the oil, and then he realizes Maggie's there. It's like, oh, the gate's not broken. For some reason, I just thought that was a really funny scene. And of course, he's just a liar, and he's like, I just saw the car. I don't know who Morgan is, or or not Morgan, Gabriel. I don't know why I keep saying Morgan. But it's like, I don't know who Gabriel is, or any of that stuff. And then I love the scene where Maggie's like, you went there to betray us and everything. That's what Cal said when you dragged him there, and that's why he left you there. And he was like, Cal's delusional. And the guy was just like, what the hell? And he's like, Cal. And then he just, the face he was making, and he just like flips him off. That was like the funniest looking thing to me. He was just so calm about it. It's like, I don't want to hear it. I'm just flipping you off. So I love that. And Maggie actually lets the guy in, which was kind of nuts. Which they use, of course, the typical thing where the douchebag character is let in, and then they say the exact same thing one of the actual good characters says, because Eno was like, after everything he's done to us and against us, all that stuff, and then they cut to the giant group of saviors being brought in by Jesus, Tara, and Morgan, and he says the exact line that was just said about him, like, no way, they're a bunch of killers and stuff. So of course that leads to that storyline, which was very interesting in this episode with, I just don't know what's really going on with Morgan, where he wants to take these people out. Like, he's already got the dude that he was dealing with when he was at the kingdom, who basically got the kid killed. And so he's whistling and being a douchebag, and then he's like, oh, it's that armor. It's like, it's shrunk. And it's like, oh, that's the kid's armor. And it's like, I don't know why you're wearing that. It didn't do anything for him. And of course he wanted to kill that guy, but then a bunch of zombies come like falling down the hill, which also looked really funny to me. But then like this line of people end up escaping, and so he eventually catches up to him. He kills one person, so that way he's just dead weight and they actually cannot escape anymore. And he was about to kill the guy, and then Jesus comes in to try to stop him, and they actually get into a fight. And I was kind of surprised by how long it lasted, because Jesus like knows martial arts. Because I was thinking of the character like, I was thinking of them as their comic counterparts. Morgan in the comics did like nothing near as intense physically as Morgan in the TV show, with him having like a bow staff and like spinning and teaching people how to fight. None of that was in the comics. Like, he was not that character in any regard. He didn't have like any of these skills or anything like that. So seeing them fight, I was like, I don't think this will really work. And plus, he didn't actually know martial arts. Like, he learned some moves from a guy who taught him how to be Zen. But I was like, that's learning a couple moves. Like, granted, he even taught someone else how to do it. But I was like, that's still, I would imagine, not nearly the level of training that Jesus would have, unless he learned martial arts after a bunch of zombies came in, and that's when he learned how to do martial arts. But they actually kind of go toe to toe, and it was actually a pretty cool fight, if I'm being honest. Like, Morgan mostly got hit, which I think does make more sense, like I said, with Jesus actually knowing martial arts, and then Morgan, definitely having some skills, because like I said, he lasted longer than I thought. But for the most part, he got kicked and was being hit and stuff. And he got his few hits in for sure. Like, he did some cool moves, like when Jesus was about to go for like a spin kick, and Morgan like tripped him up with his foot. He was like, I'm not about to get kicked like twice in 2 seconds. So they definitely traded some blows, and then ultimately Jesus got the bow staff from him, and it was like, all right, this is it. And like, he didn't want to keep fighting, because he already asked him like, is it done? And Morgan kept on going. So once he got the bow staff from him, it was like, all right. Gives him the bow staff back, and the first thing he does is flip it to the pointed end and puts it right under Jesus' neck. And it's like, we need to kill these people. That is where Morgan is. And then he kind of stabs him, and it's like, I need help and stuff. And he's just, who knows where he's gonna land. Flip a coin. It's like Two-Face with him. It might be good, might be bad. He might like never kill again. He might just kill everybody. You don't know with Morgan, but entertaining at least. He was. Oddly enough, he was the character Jesus is right now, which is annoying, where it's like, we don't kill anybody, and it's like, that's just how more people get killed. At least in this show it is. That might work in real life, where you can actually just say, you go to prison, but in The Walking Dead, anyone who's bad who lives becomes a killer. Like, they just kill more innocent people. That's just how The Walking Dead works. So Jesus is doing that like a millionfold. Like, Morgan did it once with the wolf dude, and that led to some issues, and this is just like tenfold. Like, technically it's probably like 40-fold, really, because there's so many people, and it's just like, yeah, we are executioners, and eventually they'll work with us, and it's just like, that's just I don't know, that's just not how I would operate it, but that's just me. End of the world. Even though they would have been using up bullets on all those people, still, better to use bullets than like actual food and resources. It's like, we got campers in the back where we can lock them all up at, and it's like, well, how's that going to play out in the long run? But yeah, we'll see what happens with that, because these are elements that are different from the comics, with them carrying a giant group of people back to the camp. So I'm very curious how that's going to play out, because I have no basis on as far as from the comics, what can go right or wrong. And in my mind, I just see it going completely wrong. I'm sure it'll be like right down the middle, where some people will be like, hey, they gave us mercy, so let's join them and actually take out the saviors, and that way, or take out Negan and the other people following him. And then you have other people who are like, no, we're still with Negan, I am still Negan, that sort of situation. So I feel like when it comes down to it, it'll be like split down the middle, and some people will help them because they were given mercy, and other people won't because they're douchebags. So we'll just have to wait and see. But it was just like, that was just a crazy moment. I didn't expect them to actually fight, which I thought was pretty crazy. And it lasted for a minute too, so I was like, alright, cool action sequence. And Morgan being crazy. You never know. You might not hate him, but he'll always be nuts. That's Morgan. The last story, of course, is our most emotional story of the episode with Eric and Aaron. And it's oddly simple because I was pretty sure I knew what was going to happen, mostly because of the comics. And I think I mentioned this in my last review, but there's so much more important in this show. At least to me they are. With Aaron, he's like one of the main characters. And in the comics, it was just like, yeah, Aaron and Eric, they're together. And then, I think it was just like in this episode, Eric died. And I legitimately was like, I can't even remember which character that was because neither of them were that important to me in the comics. And I had to go back to be like, who did they meet first? And I was like, okay, they met Aaron first, so he's the more important one, and Eric died. That's how it was for me in the comics. And in this, also, way more important. Like, that just kind of proves, like, Aaron is so much more important than this, because in the comics, Eric had nothing. He died in, like, a firefight, and it was a bubble, and it was like, Eric, oh my god, he's dead. That was it. And it was like the next page, it was more people dying. Like, it was actually pretty effed up. It was kind of the ending of this episode with Ezekiel and people just getting murdered. That's what happened with Eric in the comics. It was just like during the all-out war, it was just like, here's a page, some people died, here's the next page, oh, Eric is dead, here's the next page, somebody else died. That's how it was during that moment. So it was actually great in this episode for it to have such an emotional resonance, because it was not like that at all in the comics. Some people may have liked them. Maybe it was just because of the way I read the comics, because I read like the giant compendiums where I would just fly through, but they just weren't that relevant. And in this episode, it proved how, Aaron was such an important character, and how Eric was because of that. And it sucked that someone had to die, and it was an insanely emotional moment where Eric is bleeding, and it seemed like he could survive too, because I don't know if I mentioned that before. It was like, if they miss arteries or whatever, and if it goes through, he could technically live much easier than if the bullet is still inside of him. But it was like, oh, it's a through and through. That's basically in the TV world. It's like, oh, it's a through and through. You always live. That's pretty much how TV works. If the bullet went through you and they don't have to like pull it out because it stopped, you always live. That's pretty much how TV rules work with guns. Oh, I got shot in the stomach and it went in and it went out. Oh, you'll be fine. Oh man, it's traumatic. They tie something around you, which they did in this episode. They're like tying this hoodie around him, and I thought, oh, it might be tough, but I was like, I think they could kind of make that work, but they couldn't. It was a lot more realistic, and it was like, well, they don't have like a doctor to help him out and like sew him up or do whatever that needs to happen to keep him alive, and so Eric sits by this tree, and Aaron is just like, okay, we're gonna make this work. And it was kind of just like, they need you to go fight. And he knew he was dying. And that's kind of what made it such an emotional moment, even before the ending. And it was just like, they need you to go fight. He was like, I'm right. And it's just like, we know how this goes. And that was pretty much it. And I thought that was a really good moment. And then, of course, the end of the episode, insanely well acted. It was so sad. And, he sees the tree and he sees the gun. It's just like a blood spot on the tree. And he looks out and he sees the zombified version of his boyfriend. And he's just out there walking. And he breaks down. And it was such a good moment where he's just watching him kind of walk towards and I think that made it like even more intense, because it was like, it's not just, oh, it's not him anymore, which, they have the other guy coming. It's like, that's not him anymore. And he's, breaking down. But the other side of it was that not only is it not, it's not really Eric anymore, but he's walking into an actual herd of zombies. Like, he's walking towards the herd to be one of them now. And it's like, that kind of just adds on to like the sad element of it, where it's like he can't even go to stop him from, being a zombie and walking around like that. It's like he kind of just has to let him roam, because that's kind of where he's gone. So it's just like, man, that's tragic. That was definitely a sad moment in the episode. The saddest moment for sure in the episode, but incredibly well acted. Just incredibly freaking sad. It was incredibly sad, but incredibly well done. And a great way to kind of lead us towards the end of the episode, which is where we get the moment with Rick and Daryl and that weird setup with them, and then the tragedy that's going to really unfold in the next episode with Ezekiel and his people, and also whatever's going to end up happening with Carol. But definitely a great episode, of course. We'd love to know what you guys thought about it, so please comment below. Let me know your favorite parts about it, least favorite parts about it. And I definitely want to know, whether you're a comic reader or not, I would love to know your theories on how things are going to play out as far as the deaths of characters. Because we have so many characters that didn't even exist in the comics that change up so many elements. There are, just huge moments like Jesus and Morgan and Tara actually taking all these people to the hilltop. There's so many things that are different, and how people can die and where they can be, and just it's so drastically different. I would love to know your theories on who will actually live and who will actually die. The only theory that I have for a death actually comes from the comics, and it's because of the first episode. And I mentioned in that I kind of know where things are headed. So, of course, I can't spoil that. But there's like one character where I'm like, I don't want that to happen. But I feel like that might be the case because of the first episode and what we got to see. I was like, oh, we're jumping to this point in the future. I think I know how this season's going to end. It's going to... If they do everything that they did in the comics from that point, for the season finale, it'll be real messed up. But I have like one legitimate theory. Other than that, it's kind of up in the air. Well, I have two. Man, now that I think about it, they're both in like the exact same vein, so I hope neither of them really happen. But unfortunately, I think they both will. And if you read the comics, you probably know what I'm talking about. But I'd love to know your theories for who you think will ultimately end up getting killed during this war. And of course, let me know what you guys thought about this episode. So please comment below, let me know, and thanks for watching.